Kane Linnett fell to the fucking floor for no fucking reason. I'd rather them not allow diving than call up obstructions for diving, personally, so whatever. Anyway, so there was no incidents, were there, in this game that flag that jumped out, so everyone, I think, was surprised when there was a charge. So I went back and watched the incident, and what I think has happened is, in effecting the tackle, Ben Flowers effectively dropped his weight onto the ankles of it was Lawler, weren't it, the Hull KR player, as he was going to ground. So he's tackled him from behind. He was the second man. I'm not sure if he was the first man in the tackle or the second man in the tackle, but he was around the waist and then dropped onto the back of his ankles. Right. It's hard to see there was any intent or anything, but that impact of him dropping onto him kind of like led the ankles to sort of twist and bend. Now, Lawler got straight up and played the ball quickly, and there was no injury, so that's positive, you got to say. But yeah, that's what the charge was for, and that's the only way I can interpret where they see the danger, the dropping of the weight. And we have had other ones before where if players put their sort of weight onto another player. And actually, there was a very, very similar incident that James Bentley got charged with that we'll talk about later on. We'll talk about the game he was in later on, but we can talk about the incident now, where it was on it was on Turner of Huddersfield, and Turner did actually get up gingerly from that one, and someone came on to treat him, but no one flagged it at the time either. Sky were just praising how great James Bentley has been since he came back. No one flagged it as an issue or an incident, even though there was a break in play for a potential injury, and he got a grade A charge. So, and the actual mechanics of the tackle looked very similar. He was in a trailing tackle technique, and sort of in effecting the tackle, left his weight on the feet of the opposing player as he was falling forward. So the one question I would have is, why was one a grade A and one a grade B when they look exactly the same? That's the only question I would have about it after trying to figure out what went wrong in both those two instances, because no one remembered them.
I mean, it's obvious. The obvious interpretation is, and perhaps the lazy interpretation is, its reputation, isn't it?
Well, that's why he's got 2 games for a grade B, because he's had a previous penalty notice this year. So you don't, for a similar offence. I think that was more a third man in one, but yeah. Anyway, so that's why. So if Wigan fans are wondering why, I think that's why it was flagged as dangerous contact. I can't explain why this one was a grade B and one that looked very similar was a grade A, but I'd love to get these explanations, but you can't, because people get too offended and insulting about it, don't they?
Yes, it becomes more emotive the more detail you provide.
Yeah, but I tried to take that out of it and just look at the incidents, and I'd love the explanation of why one was a grade higher in dangerousness than the other one, if I'm completely honest. And Man of Steel points, Jordan Abdul got 3, Elliot Minchella got 2, and Kane Linnett got 1. League Express Albert Goldthorpe points, Abdul got 3, Jez Litton got 2, and Linnett got 1. Of course, Linnett was the Sky man of the match. So many good performances for Hull KR to pull out of this one, Alan.
Yeah, tricky one. First thing I want to say is I think this was beard karma. Lamb was leading him to victories when he had a lustrous beard. Beard transfers to Tony Smith, and Bob's your uncle. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, I thought Hull KR's spine was brilliant in this match. Will Dagger looked the best I've seen him play, I would say. I don't see him a lot, obviously, but from kind of in recollection, he did very well at fullback. Litton, I think people have picked that out. He was brilliant for me. He was probably my player of the match just because of the impact that he had. He was involved in the 2 best tries for me. He was involved in the one of the best tries, the Minchella one, the early break, down the middle. Kind of what you want a puck to be doing.
Best try for me as well, I think. So I kind of get where you're coming from with both those 2 players.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's talked about Abdul, so we don't really need to talk about Pollard anymore. But yeah, when he wants to, he's very, very good. Yeah, there was a hatful of good performances. People have talked about Linnett. He kind of gave Hardaker a hard day. all day. Yeah, I thought Elliot Mitchell was good.
I was going to talk a little bit more about Jordan Abdul because I do think he was the main difference in this game. I think he obviously used his strengths against his opposite number in this match in the man up directly opposite him, I suppose, in terms of young Harry Smith. Abdul uses physicality well. Abdul has done this against Wigan before. He was exceptional in the game last year when London beat Wigan back in the early stages of 2019 down at the Trailfinders. And so I think Wigan do have problems defending him. He's a bit unusual, isn't he? And Hull KR are a bit unusual. And they really were effective in this game. I'd stop short of saying Litton was the player of the game, just because I think he had 3 or 4 really, really good interventions in the game that broke the game apart. But I think Abdul shone throughout and was the driving force behind all of it, backed up ably by the other people. But they spotted something, didn't they, down that edge, where if they got at Smith, Hardacre and Isa were not backing young Harry Smith up like they needed to at all. And so Smith looked a little bit lacking in defence, which I don't think is fair. I think, a 20-year-old halfback needs the support from his experienced centre and his tough man second rower, and they didn't offer it enough. And also, several times there was issues down that side where Manfredi, on a couple of occasions, Bevan French from one of the kicks, were just totally lost at sea, not in the right position, not making the right decisions. So it was consistent across that edge. There was bad decisions constantly, and Abdul and Lynette were driving that hugely. Hadley played well when he played in that on that edge as well. So every credit to the Rovers with all of that, I think.
Yeah, it felt like they, I think that we've all said that they played with a lot more freedom, kind of, when the games come back, and it felt like everything that they tried kind of came off in this one. The audacious kind of offloads out the back that kind of Abdul did for Minchella's second try, and the kind of the offload. The one
for Hadley's try, where he just seemed to manage to stay elevated and keep his arm free for an eternity, and no Wigan defender seemed to think it was a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Those kind of things that, they don't always come off, do they? And it seemed like they had that really, really strong spell, certainly latter half of the first half, and the kind of getting the first 2 scores, wasn't it, in the second half? That
5 minutes after half time were crucial. Every time that Sky wanted Jenna Brooks to tell us what Adrian Lamb had said about how terrible his side were in the first half, she didn't get a chance because his side were being terrible in the second half, and Hull KR was taking
and in the other games as well. It seems to be a bit of a thing. But yeah, no, it was a KR were on it. Wigan looked way off. It feels a bit unfair to pick out individual players. You'll probably do that better than I, but for me, they all looked off.
Yeah,
not very listless and not at it.
And I think it's an obvious move to make, to go and point out the absolute star players who are performing very well every week, in people like French and Farrell, because they clearly were way off their normal standards this year. So it is an easy target to pick out those ones, but I do think it was across the board. I don't buy Jen's comment about us making too many changes, because Hull KR made a lot of changes as well. I do think we made some of the wrong changes. Mitch Clark was basically our only running forward that we put into the side. Without people like Burgess and Bullock who do that role as well, and Bullock's been doing it fantastically. I think that was a loss. I'm not sure why Joe Burgess didn't play and Jake Bowie played on the wing, because I think there's a deficit there. You're bringing Gildart back in, so there's some of the team selection things I would have a question with. But really, people talk about attitude. I don't think Wigan took Hull KR lightly. I just think their attitude was off. I don't think that was what the attitude was off with. But when you watch the game, how many times were Wigan left in one-on-one situations, either defending or attacking, going into attack or being in defence? Players were left isolated so often. And Hull KR never had that situation. They always had support, be it a runner on the shoulder for the offloads or another man coming in to wrap up what inevitably was a one-out run from Wigan, because Wigan did sometimes have opportunities where they looked around, but they couldn't get the offloads away because there was no one there. Hull KR's goal line defence was also fantastic. There was several held up over the line circumstances in this game, and I think there was two on Farrell. There was one on Hastings, if I remember rightly. I think there was one on Jake Bibby, but there was definitely one on Joe Shorrocks as well, who is the Wigan player who takes the most credit out of this game for me. Played a lot of minutes, worked really hard. Didn't make the stats round up, but when I did look at his stats, he made 30-odd tackles and didn't miss any. I thought he was probably him and Gildart were the two Wigan players who didn't come out of this with deserved criticism aimed at them. So yeah, well done to Rovers for me on that one. I was fuming obviously at the time. I mean, after 45 minutes, I was everything that they were the biggest bunch of whatever you want to call them. Was the Wigan team.
We've had a bit of time now to calm down, haven't we?
Well,
so we're a bit more reflective.
It's gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
Better team on the night won.
Oh, and this won't be the last kind of quote-unquote upset match this year, will it, with the teams as they are? So
no, and the next 40 minutes of rugby I got to watch after that fucking diabolical display by Wigan was a real palate cleanser as well, wasn't it? As we move on to the second game from Thursday, do you want to take us through the score and the stats?
This was a quality one. So it was Salford 30, Castleford 37, tied up at 24 apiece after the first 40. Robert Hicks was the busy man, blowing up all the tries.
Cass, about the beard power shift. Beard's becoming more powerful. It's no longer that little sort of yellow candy floss situation that it was in the first week of return. It's got some volume and some depth to it now.
Yeah, it's a work in progress.
Oh, it's a fucking mess, but it's not a wispy mess anymore.
A wispy mess. Cass only made 4 breaks to Salford's 6, but scored 6 tries to Salford's 5. That despite being credited with 3 more errors. Cass did have more successful offloads and more tackle busts. Plus, we were better at making grounds. Made 300 more metres at 0.5 metres per carry. Better average gain. So for Cass, Mike McMeekin with a try and 155 metres. Nathan Massey with 132 metres. Peter Matautier with 129. Paul McShane with 2 tries, a try assist, 7 tackle busts and 106 metres. For the unlucky Salford, Gil Dudson with 129 metres. Niall Evans with a try assist and 140 metres. Luke Yates with a try, 47 tackles and 11 marker tackles. And Tyrone McCarthy with 42 tackles and 10 marker tackles.
Yeah, Carsten got in first on this one as well. He said, very exciting game, but Salford's errors cost them in the end. Can we make this the average Super League game from now? Sorry for the fans of participating teams, but it's really fun as a neutral.
David Hunter said, an enthralling last 20. The winner was the team that looked guided around the best. Richardson looked more composed and Brown and Lawler here erratic. McShane was also big for Cass and his experience showed.
Joshua's granddad said, first half looked like they had got rid of tackling as well as scrums. Kevin Brown flourished for a few minutes before fading back into obscurity. McShane and Watts turned out to be the difference between the teams. Second half teams told they can tackle again, and the lack of creativity is so obvious then.
And Paul O'Brien says, a great game from both sides with Cass just having the edge. A game that all neutrals could enjoy. Yes. I don't know what the metal end of that means.
Where are we at?
I'm not sure what Paul's saying at the end.
A game that all neutrals could enjoy with NWBA's rugby. End to end, I think, is what he's meant to write. I think he's tried to write end to end.
Autocorrect. Yeah, good one, wasn't it? It was quite exciting.
It was really entertaining game. It was Salford's game. like watching this for the first 15 minutes or 11 minutes, I thought, oh, well, we might have been shit, but at least